Okay, I am going to get started and we'll continue to let people in as we go. Welcome to this Citizen Science Showcase event. My name is Miranda and I'm here from the Natural History Consortium who have organised the showcase. The Citizen Science Showcase is a programme of events taking place this week, bringing together hundreds of people online and at various sites across the region to help connect people with meaningful projects that help us to better understand the natural world through making or investigating scientific records. The showcase is part of the Citizen Science Local Pilot, which is an initiative working to support improvements to citizen science across Somerset, Wiltshire, Dorset and the west of England. This is supported by Natural England and funded by the government's Natural Capital and Ecosystem Assessment Programme. I'd just like to remind you that the webinar this evening is being recorded. There will be time for questions at the end, so please put these in the chat and I can read them out when we get to the end of the presentation, or you're welcome to raise a virtual hand at the end and I will hand over to you to ask the question yourself. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Eric to introduce himself and tell us about the work that Lockleaze Neighbourhood Trust are doing.
Brilliant. Thanks for the intro, Miranda. Yeah, and welcome everyone to the launch of the Wild Streets of Lockleaze, a guide on how to green your neighbourhood. So I'm going to spend about 30 minutes sort of going into some detail about what we've done and how we've achieved it, and then I'll also open up to Q&A after that. Just sort the screen up. Okay. So where did it all come from? I'm Eric. I'm the ecologist on the Really Wild Lockleaze project and the community ecologist. And it came from its original funding from the National Lottery Community Fund. And it came via Bristol Climate Nature Partnership, who supported 6 communities to write their community climate action plans. So we consulted all the residents of Lockleaze for a series of events and community conversations and asked people what they wanted to focus on. And it came up consistently that people were concerned about the amount of development that was going on, the loss of green space and the impact of nature. And we're also really lucky in Lockleaze to have an abundance of green space. It's quite low density housing with lots of greens and verges and big gardens. So a project was born out of the desire of the residents to improve the neighbourhood for nature, and this would have multiple benefits: environmental, ecological, but also social and health benefits as well. Sort of bringing the community together for a common goal. So just before I go into how we've achieved and what we've done, I'd like to just highlight the importance of urban nature. In the past, it was sort of, you had your farming on your farmland, your people living in the cities, and then a nature reserve somewhere out in the countryside, sort of fenced off. That's where you have your nature. And I'm probably preaching to the converted here, but I'm just sort of laying a bit of groundwork. We now realise that's not enough. We want connected habitat all the way through the farmland from the nature reserves into the cities, and bring nature into our cities. And gardens and parkland can actually be more biodiverse than the green belt. If you think of the green belt, where you've got single species, perennial rye, maybe grazing land with hedgerows sort of flailed within an inch of their lives, whereas gardens and parks can actually be really biodiverse. And it's also it's where we live. So we really want to live in a healthy ecosystem. I've always thought that it kind of makes sense that we're biologically hardwired to feel happy in healthy ecosystems. Thinking back to when we were hunter-gatherers and wanting to settle where there's lots of life, lots of animals to hunt, lots of plants to eat, clean water. And obviously now this is being backed up by all the research coming out on how someone's connection to nature sort of directly affects well-being as well. We also get lots of ecosystem services. So, in an ever-warming world, if we plant more trees along our streets, We're going to have more shade, more protection from the rain, protection from flooding, cleaner air, cleaner water as they filtrate the water, fruit from fruit trees. We're helping our pollinators of the meadows that pollinate our crops, carbon sequestration. So there's all these benefits to sort of bringing more nature into our cities. And quite an interesting point, there's been some recent research coming out from Warsaw University where they found that inner city meadows support just as much or comparable biodiversity as rural meadows. And some species, such as hedgehogs, are actually faring better in the urban environment, where they actually act as a bit of a refuge from all the intensive farming and the big machinery. So yeah, it's just sort of highlighting that urban nature is really important. It's not lesser to in other areas. It's just as important, and it's also where people live. So it's a big point in helping people and nature intersect. So back to the Really Wild Lockleaze project, and when we started the project, we sort of did a bit of research and looked into how other places have done the sort of urban nature reserve model. I think the first one was in Felixstowe. You got the guys in BS3, Ben Barker and co, doing a really good job in South Bristol, around Bedminster. Friends of the Earth with Postcode Gardener, and Avon Wildlife Trust with Team Wilder as well. And the sort of approach of the urban nature reserve is looking at the urban environment as a whole. You know, nature doesn't see boundaries. So we need to use all the land. We need to use the roadside verges, the housing greens, schools, churches, sports centres, all the land available. If we can utilise a bit of all that land for nature, then we'll have this connected habitat through the cities. And also it's a good opportunity to engage different groups of people, engage the school kids, engage the church congregation, engage the people that use the sports centre and people that live in the neighbourhood. So it's a really good opportunity to engage a wide range of people that might not otherwise normally sort of go to nature events. So there's sort of many arms to the Really Wild Lockleaze project. I moved on to a map here, which I will touch on. So we've sort of we have gone into schools and sports centres and churches and helped improve their land for nature. We've also tried to get into people's gardens by supporting wildlife friendly gardening via workshops and campaigns such as No Mow May, species specific campaigns such as hedgehog friendly streets, helping people cut holes in their fences and make their neighbourhood more friendly for hedgehogs. Running mini ponds workshops. So this is all to try and help people improve their gardens. And then also running events to educate and inspire people. So we've done a lot of butterfly and bumblebee walks over Stoke Park because we recognise that if people don't learn about nature, then they won't care about it. And if they don't care about it, they won't take action. So it's sort of important to have that aspect as well. But the main focus of what I'm going to spend most of my time talking on is the nature-friendly greens. So if you're thinking of doing a similar project like this and you've got a neighbourhood, I think it's really a good place to start is to do some asset mapping, which basically means just look at what resources you've got, what space do you have, what local groups are already active that you can support. And it's quite clear here, looking at the map of Lockleaze, we've got a lot of green space. We've got that railway corridor sort of running north to south down the middle, a big wildlife corridor alongside the railway, and then Stoke Park off to the right, and then Lockleaze sort of sandwiched in between. And there's a lot of these housing verges. Lockleaze was built just after the Second World War. And they built at a lower density then, bigger gardens, roadside verges and greens. It was sort of, think back to the Dig for Victory campaigns where, you know, back in the Second World War, there's a huge issue around food security. So people were encouraged to grow their own veg, have big gardens. So they built at lower density, which is now a real big opportunity to sort of empower people and facilitate people that live in the neighbourhood to sort of take ownership back of these spaces. I think a lot of the communal council-owned spaces have just been mown for so many years, and people kind of think, oh, that's the council's. But really, you know, council land is communal. It belongs to all of us. And getting people out there, growing food, creating nature habitat, I think is a really great thing. And if you can get residents who live around these greens to come together for a common goal, it has those social benefits around community cohesion as well. So yeah, looking at the map of Lockleaze, it was really clear there's good opportunities to create connected habitat from the railway line across to Stoke Park by creating some habitat in these green spaces. So where to start? We are I was working out of Lockleaze Neighbourhood. So I work for Avon Wildlife Trust, but the work is done through Lockleaze Neighbourhood Trust, and we're an organisation that, well, both organisations, Lockleaze Neighbourhood Trust and Avon Wildlife Trust, really believe in sort of residents leading the change. So in terms of where we started, it had to be somewhere where the residents on that street were keen to do it. We were led by people that were or a group of people that are enthusiastic. And once you've got those initial street champions, people that wanted to take action for nature, we help them sort of door knock and find other people who are keen. And then we would hold a community planning meeting. And then we found this was sort of to go with the seasons. A lot of the planting happens in winter and spring. So if you start this consultation in the sort of community planning meeting in the summer, it's nice. You can come out and plan your sessions, and then by the time you've planned what you want to do, what habitat you want to create on the greens, you're ready to crack on when winter comes around. So I've got a picture of one of our community meetings here. So once we had an interested resident, we would leaflet all their neighbours and set up with a table, pictures of different habitats. This is what a hedgerow looks like. This is what different approaches to creating wildflower meadows look like, and all the sort of different things they could do on their green. Different trees and how high they're going to get, and what fruit trees they could have. But this is also the point where we would ask them about what their experience has been like living in Lockleaze, what their memories are, how do they already use the green, where do people picnic or play football, because we don't want to plant a load of trees in the way of that. So sort of bringing the community on board and having them create the design really helps them sort of buy into it, and also it helps not to aggravate people or cause any conflicts, because everyone was included in the planning process as much as possible. We had a big sort of flip chart paper, and we drew where we wanted the meadows to go, where we wanted the trees, and had these conversations. And then we took that map and we digitized it. So sort of made it into a nice format. We put it into a consultation document with what people wanted and how it was reflected in the plan, and we posted this round to all the people that live around the green so that they could reflect on it. We also included in there, if you don't respond, we'll assume you agree. We put posters up around the green as well, so really trying to reach as many people as we can. And then we would take their responses. So any responses, any comments we had whilst door knocking, whilst having the community meeting, any emails or phone calls we got, we recorded that all in a spreadsheet with house numbers and their comments, so that we had that on record. So when we're going to permission from the council, we can show that there's sort of unanimous support, or there was an issue and we've resolved it, and this many people support, which was quite important when getting permission. So we would have this consultation, people would feedback, we'd tweak the plans, and then we would get permission from the council. In Bristol, I'm not sure how it is for other authorities, but Bristol City Council have a service called Pinpoint, where you can see which council department owns all the council land. So that was really useful in finding out, is this land owned by the housing association? Is it owned by parks? Is it owned by highways? And once we established who was the owner. So if it was housing in this case, we would contact the housing officer, and they wanted to see that we had that consensus, that we had done a thorough consultation. And they also wanted to know that parks were happy with the ongoing management, which I'll touch on in a mo. So, oh, I just need to move. Yes, so we get permission from the council, and we really wanted to make sure that we were making it as easy as possible to go through. So, long-term management needs to be sustainable. And that included things such as making sure that we're leaving enough room in between the elements to make the mowing easy, so at least 6 foot between elements so they can mow the grass easily. Not putting in any elements that are going to get too out of hand. Things like living willow structures. A great idea, but if you're just having a new community group that's starting up, sort of start simple. Because if in the worst case, I mean, our residents have been very committed, and it's been really heartwarming to see how much people care about nature and commit to it. But in terms of the council's point of view, there's no guarantee that they're going to carry on maintaining the space. So to begin with, we went for relatively maintenance-free options, things like patches of wildflower meadow, fruit trees, no-dig herb beds. And sort of had an open conversation with the Parks Department to see what their management requirements are, and that's included in a lot of that information. Key points has been pulled out to the do's and don'ts section in this guide, which will be on our website available. The link is at the end of the presentation, which I will also send out after this event. So once we had permission from the council, we would put the plan into action. And it was really a matter of working with the seasons here. So another key point was that we made WhatsApp groups. So that's been a really key way of communicating with our groups. So we'd set that up at the first community planning meeting, and it's been a really useful way of communicating with our residents and also them self-organising. We're aware of digital exclusion, so we've also keep people on an email list and use other ways of communication. But for those that do use it, WhatsApp has really been a useful tool to sort of keep the momentum going, allow the residents who are creating that habitat to sort of self-organise. So yeah, that's been successful. But yeah, when it came to creating the habitat, it was really a matter of working with the seasons, and so sort of in the winter we would do a lot of the tree planting and putting in the mini hedgerows like this one here. We're lucky enough to have the council tree team come out and help us with this. So it's worth contacting your local tree team and making sure that they wanted to make sure that we were planting sort of consistently with the way that they plant on council green spaces. So using the spiral guards and the hedgerows, using the bigger cage guards on the trees. We sourced you can source all of your trees from local nurseries. Local provenance is best. We got ours from Blaze, which I think were grown in Wales. Really nice mix of native hedgerow species. And it's just being really clear of the residents what the expectation is, you know. So when you're at that planning meeting, that's why we almost had like top trumps cards of different tree species and how big are they going to get? Are they going to have blossom? Are they going to have fruit? And it was really a matter of making sure we're putting the right tree in the right place with the tree planting. But that was really satisfying thing to do in winter. We also put in things like no-dig herb beds. The residents wanted to be able to sit on the bench and almost feel like you're surrounded by lavender, so almost like a little mini sensory herb garden with culinary herbs and things that are good for pollinators too. So we sort of turned over the soil, put down cardboard, so flip the grass over, cut it into cubes, flip the grass over, put cardboard down, mulched with a lot of compost, and then planted the herbs in there. And then this is the meadow creation. So this was more sort of in March time. You can see we had quite a lot of success using this method of turf cutter. So it's quite competitive nutrient-rich grass species there. So we cut out the grass species and that top layer of turf, raked it, and then sowed it with a mixture of annuals and perennials. The annuals sort of come up in the first year, like this. So we had really lovely results that first summer, all the annuals coming up, and then they provide a nursery crop for the perennials below. We got all our seed from Emma's Gate. But it's just been really nice to talk to the residents who live around here and have been involved. You know, coming home from work, coming home from school, they've created these habitats. You know, we've facilitated it, but they've created these habitats, and watching them change sort of every day as you walk past it, different times of year, seeing insects and different forms of wildlife visiting the space, uh, and living in the space. You know, they wouldn't have these little sentient creatures wouldn't have had a home if we didn't sort of take this action for nature. And I think in quite daunting challenges we face, like climate change and the ecological crisis, sort of teaming up with your neighbours to have positive action like this, I think it really gives people a sense of agency and hope, and sort of helps brighten up the neighbourhood too. Um, so yeah, that was how we established the meadows. There's a much more thorough how-to guides, both on the Team Wilder website from Avon Wildlife Trust and also on our Lockleaze Neighbourhood Trust website. We've got a series of how-to videos. Links for all those are at the end of the presentation, which I will send out after the event. So it was also key, and we need to prove to parks how we're going to manage the land. So we wrote up a management plan, who was doing what, and who what needed to be done, when it needed to be done, and who was responsible for it. So a really simple document, but just outlining that, so the residents know what they need to do and when, and the council know, you know, okay, we can cut the grass at the end of summer. But in some areas we ran workshops on various things, whether it is pruning your fruit trees, or here you can see scything the meadow. There's Sylvia looking very groovy with a scythe in hand. So yeah, it was nice to be able to equip the residents of the knowledge, and that's the idea. Is, you know, we're not coming in and just running a one-off event and sort of disappearing off into the distance. It's sort of equipping residents of the knowledge that they need to maintain these spaces as well. And this sort of goes back to this to for with by slide that I wanted to touch on. It sort of runs through everything we do, both in Avon Wildlife Trust and Lockleaze Neighbourhood Trust, where sort of doing things to residents is not on. Doing things for residents is okay, but it's not really sustainable. But doing stuff with residents is really good. And residents leading the change is sort of the gold standard. That's what we're aiming for. So if we can equip and facilitate people that live in the neighbourhood to take action for nature, then we're doing our job. So this is a citizen science showcase, so I should probably touch on that bit. It's really important to be able to measure impact, and also it's nice to engage people in looking a bit closer at nature, as sort of both the ecological and the social side, which we can show we've had an impact on. So ecological surveys, which I'm going to go into a bit in a minute, and also, you know, feedback forms, of which I'll send one after this event. So do fill it out and get that done. But it really helps us evidence our work. You know, things like having a nature connection scale. It's quite hard to quantify these things, but there's various methods out there. Having various questions linked to nature connection, rating them 1 to 10, and then getting feedback on that is useful to show sort of the impact we're having on people. And then in terms of the ecological benefits, we tried lots of different versions of surveying. So first I just want to touch on the sort of more methodical surveying we did. This is Morgan, a UE student that came out and utilised university students. They're looking for projects to do. And if you can give them a really tangible, exciting, real world project, it's a great opportunity for them to learn and get out into the workplace. And it was great for us to have someone dedicated to sort of gathering the data and crunching those numbers. So we did a number of transects before. It's really important to get your baseline. It's like doing the before and after photos. It's really easy to forget to do the before one, but getting a baseline is super important. So we did quadrats where we were creating the meadows before, when it was just sort of mown grass, and got a complete species list of what was there, and then went and did exactly the same quadrats afterwards. And here are the results. So, nothing too surprising that we saw an uplift in biodiversity creating a meadow, but it's really nice to have that evidence there. And it was actually really interesting to see the difference in the approaches of meadow. So where we turf cut and sowed the seed, that's the one on the top left in Thornycroft, we saw a much bigger uplift in biodiversity than where we used plug plants and let it grow, even though it was already more diverse in Stanfield to begin with. So it's interesting to see the sort of difference in approaches, and it's useful to have that data there. So that was our kind of focused methodical project we did with uni students. But there's also loads of fantastic surveying schemes out there. This is a great sort of calendar by the Natural History Museum, showing a lot of them. And these are really useful national schemes to get people involved with. You're helping add information to national data sets, but you can also pull out your own data and keep your own records to track that change over time. I'm going to touch on some of those now. So this was our bee walk that we did. So this is with Bumblebee Conservation Trust, Butterfly Conservation Trust, a similar one for butterflies as well. And these species, a lot of bumblebee species, for example, they're an indicator, a bioindicator of good habitat. The same with butterflies. If you've got lots of different butterflies, you've got all the food plants that they require. And then if you've got lots of bumblebees, they've got enough undisturbed areas to nest in. And then lots of plants for pollination. So they're useful to use as a bioindicator. And of course, we want more bumblebees themselves anyway, being the most important pollinators. So we signed up to the bee walk survey, and we set a walk that takes in a lot of the different areas we've worked on, different roadside verges, different greens that we had worked on, and also up to the sports centre where we had done a lot of work. And it's great to engage local residents as well. We had some residents come out to our botanical surveying. We've done a lot of fit counts of the residents that live around the greens on the meadow. And here's a local resident who's come out to help do the bumblebee surveys as well. So it's a great way of engaging people and gathering data for your project. And like I say, the data for the bee walk will go into national data sets and help inform the sort of bigger picture of the health of bees in the UK. But also you can keep your own local records and see if the numbers have been going up or down, especially where you've created that habitat. So yeah, there's lots of schemes to get involved in terms of citizen science. I also recommend submitting them to the big schemes, keeping your own records, but also submitting them to your local recording centre. So here in Bristol, we have BREC, the Bristol and Regional Environmental Records Centre. There might be an equivalent if you live elsewhere. Well, there should be. But that will mean that all your sightings of species will really help if people pull that data out for if they're doing practical conservation, see what species there. Planners use it as well. So, rather than just identifying something and then filing it and sitting on a shelf, if you can upload your data to as many places as possible, there's more chance it will be used and utilized in planning and such. Yeah, we also did fit counts. There was a talk on that. I don't know if any of you went to the talk earlier in the week, also part of the Citizen Science Showcase, but that was a really good, accessible way of getting people to observe nature, and you can sort of do it in the same spot. even if you create more habitat there, you can sort of see if you're getting more of those different groups of insects. It's sort of a really good introduction to insects. You only have to identify down to groups. Is it a bee? Is it a hoverfly? And it only takes 10 minutes. So check out Fit Counts, Flower Insect Time Counts, hosted by the UK National Pollinator Scheme. And it's a sort of, it only takes 10 minutes. So, we would do a walk or an event, and then you can just stick it on the end of events. So it was a really nice thing to do, quick thing, and you get good data out of it as well. There's a couple of case studies here, so it's been really nice to hear from residents and hear about how they've had that social, that there's been that social impact as well, getting to meet their neighbours, coming together over a common positive goal and sort of helping improve their neighbourhood. So it's been really nice to sort of capture that information as well and have those conversations with the people who have been involved with the project. There's also, I put a link to some of the funders on the last slide. So if you're looking to do this thing, the Find a Funder page via Team Wilder is a really good resource, and also the West of England Local Nature Recovery Toolkit. So many organisations and names, I feel like my head's going to burst. But yeah, it's great. There's so much happening in Bristol and beyond. Yeah, get involved. I hope you are inspired to do the same thing and create more nature in our urban spaces. I think it's a really good thing to do, really good way to engage people, and we need to act now to help nature, and it's really satisfying, having created that habitat and then going back and seeing all the species that are flourishing. It's really nice. And also my role, a community ecologist, I really enjoyed this role, and I think we need community ecologists in every community. So that's my little pitch. Cool. I'm happy to move to the Q&A now.
Thanks, Eric. That was fantastic. It's so nice to see kind of such a great example of success and engagement with the community. And I thought the stuff that you explained, you really made it simple about kind of how to involve people to kind of do stuff with them and by them, not just going in and making decisions for them. Well, that was really great. I'm just sharing a link in the chat, which is the link to the document that you've been sharing with us on the presentation, so people can access that nice and easily. I've got one question in the chat, so I'll start with that. Anyone else, please put your questions in the chat or raise a hand, a little virtual hand, turn your camera on if you'd like to ask in person. So the question says, myself and neighbours want to green a space that borders the Bath Bristol railway path. What you have done sounds great, but much more complex than we were thinking. Any advice on how to start small and where to get advice and support?
Yeah, interesting. It depends what sort of scale you're going for, because there is two approaches. Some people just go for the guerrilla gardening approach and just create a little patch of meadow or plant a tree. And I think that's all well and good on a certain scale. But if you're really getting people to and investing in a space, I think it is good to get the permissions. And in terms of doing that, yeah, using pinpoint is really valuable in finding out who owns the land, and then just contact your local council to sort of get the permissions. You can use your local councillors to get through to them sometimes. Also, Sustrans are doing, I know they do a lot on the Bristol to Bath cycle path, and they do have volunteer groups that sort of go up and down and help nip back the brambles and stuff. And they do have a bit of funding to make nature-friendly cycle paths as well. So I definitely think linking up with an organisation like Sustrans, if you're focusing on the cycle path, would be a really good move. And I think Tom Ball sort of holds some of that area on the cycle path, so it might be worth chatting to him and seeing if you can, yeah, send me an email. I might be able to link you up. But yeah, just find the landowner, start by having conversations, put posters up. But yeah, any more questions on what habitat you want to create and how to actually create it, I'm happy to answer. But in terms of getting started, I'd definitely touch base with Sustrans, and they would know who would be able to give you the thumbs up as well, because I know they're active on the cycle path.
Excellent, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions they would like to ask? I've got a message in the chat, or just a comment, I think, in the chat from Emma, which I'll read out. My street has a back lane which is used by hedgehogs between several houses. It gives access to about 6 garages, but only 2 are used for cars. I'm wondering if that is council land or belongs to residents. I would like to encourage people to leave coverage for the hedgehogs.
So yeah, the street
Follows that up, sorry, with how do I find out who owns that land?
Okay, so it is, yeah, so you can use pinpoint. So if you just Google pinpoint, um, pinpoint maps, Bristol City Council, it will take you to the website. And there's a lot of layers on the left-hand side, and you do have to, it's like a little tick box, which is land ownership. So you want to look for that checkbox and just turn that one on the map, and you'll be able to see all the council-owned land. And then it's sort of highlighted in purple, and you can click on any block you want, and it will tell you the ownership of that. If it's highways, if it's housing, if it's parks. So yeah, that's the way to find out if it's owned by the council. And then yeah, if it's belonging to residents, it will just not be covered by a pink blob. It will just be residential ownership. So yeah, definitely check that out. But yeah, also have a look at the Hedgehog Streets campaign by People's Trust for Endangered Species, because they've got loads of information about how to help encourage hedgehogs and also engage your neighbours to do the same.
Yeah, brilliant. I suppose often in situations like that, other residents might not even be aware that the hedgehogs are there and using the space. So
Yeah.
just telling them about it might help to start the conversation. We've got another question from Grant. What were your biggest challenges?
Ooh. Yeah, it's a big question. I suppose in the beginning it was difficult to know um, who's who makes the final decision in terms of who to contact in the council. But for housing land, it's housing officers. For parks land, it's local parks department. And we've been trying to create our dream is to create a process within the council so you can almost get a permit for this. So there's like an email, you can email through where you want and what you want to do, and then who's responsible for what, and you can get a permit to actually create that. Because at the minute there's no official way to sort of do this. You just need to speak to your local housing officer or parks department to get the thumbs up. So we fingers crossed going to get more funding, because the Really Wild project, the first lot of CCA funding sort of ends in July, but it looks like we're getting funded further. Fingers crossed. And that's really something we would like to work on, is work with the council to sort of make it easier for people that do want to create nature habitat in their neighbourhood, to have like a sort of formal process to make that easier. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges. But what has been really encouraging is just, going out door knocking and chatting to people. It's quite like a daunting thing to do, but as soon as you're talking about local nature, everyone, the vast majority of people are really enthusiastic, and they care about it a lot. So it's been really nice, going into the project. I didn't know, and walking up to doors to knock on them, people think you're trying to sell them windows or insurance. But as soon as you're like, no, this is a local nature project. Your neighbour Dave wants to, or it's best going door knocking with them, wants to create the habitat. That's been really good. So that's something I was worried about, but it's actually been really positive reception, which has been good. But yeah, getting permission in the beginning was slightly challenging.
That's great. And yeah, I mean, sounds like it would be a really useful resource if you hopefully get more funding and are able to do it. I've got more questions coming through. So David says, how did you go about finding street champions?
Yeah, so I'm because I work for Avon Wildlife Trust, but I feel very lucky to be embedded within Lockleaze Neighbourhood Trust when I'm working on the Really Wild Lockleaze project. So that sort of gave me a massive head start in the way that the people that work here and come and use the community centre every day, um, you sort of meet people very quickly, and then we hosted events. So in the summer we did LNT on tour, and because we are based at the community centre in Lockleaze, but we set up on the green, and sort of had mobile community events just to have community conversations. But I understand that's a bit sort of bespoke, and maybe you don't have access to being within a community organisation, but even just going to any local events and having these conversations, going to local nature events, going to, if you've got a local community orchard, if you've got a local community garden already, and speaking to people there, and the people that care about nature are probably going to be active locally. So that's a good start. And then when you meet one person, you meet another person. It sort of spirals out there. But yeah, I'll just go to local nature events and get chatting to local people.
Brilliant. And another question from Sue. Have you tried getting people to rewild their gardens? Any tips?
Yeah, so we did a big No Mo May campaign, which was really successful, but it was also trying to get that message across of it's not really just No Mo May. I think we had No Mo May, then June Too Soon, and then Let It Bloom. So it's just trying, to get that message across through that. But using that campaign was really useful. We had a lot of people, hundreds of people sign up in Lockleaze to leave part of their garden wild. And that's, one of the easiest things to do is just not mow a patch. But we also ran workshops. So where we've got a little bit of space in our community garden, we showed people how to make mini ponds. Ponds are one of the best things to do for wildlife. So showing people how to make tools and where to get the pond, how to make ponds and what tools to use and where to get the pond liner from was really useful. And yeah, seed giveaways, giving away trees to people to put in their gardens. And then also species focused campaigns. So we sort of, if you focus on endearing species, things like hedgehogs, things like swifts, for hedgehogs, bumblebees, you need to leave a wild patch of your garden. So that will benefit a load of other species as well.
Yeah, great advice. And I suppose, yeah, talking about the No Mo May campaign, like there's lots of campaigns that already exist and projects that already exist, and you can use those rather than having to design your own concepts or materials.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely check out that the Natural History Museum survey calendar. That's got a load of good events and links in it.
Brilliant. And a question from Emma. Do you have any tips for door knocking? I want to start doing this, but feel nervous.
Yeah, I would advise go with someone else. I think that helps a lot is having a buddy to go with. If you can find anyone, I suppose it might be tougher if you haven't had that initial person yet to go door knocking with, but maybe there's get in touch with your local community organisation, tell them you're interested in doing something positive in your neighbourhood, and if there's anyone that could come out and help door knocking with you. But yeah, I think if you're starting off, it's nice to have someone there with you to sort of help back you up. And just sort of go in knowing what you want to say, and yeah, just be really clear at the beginning. Hi, I'm here, talking about this space out here. We'd love to set up a community garden. And yeah, I was nervous about that too to begin with, but once you've spoken to a couple of people and they sort of see that you're trying to do a good thing in the neighbourhood, you generally get really positive reception. So
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. It looks like the questions have finished in the chat. Lots of thanks coming in the chat to you.
nice. I'll just remind that yeah, I will send out I'll share it now. I'll send out the PowerPoint as well. But there's loads of really good links here. There at the top, there's a link to the actual document that we're launching. So this is the PDF of the how-to guide. Big thanks to Bristol Natural History Consortium and the Citizen Science Showcase for helping us create that. And then it's got my email on there. Feel free to shoot me any questions. Avon Wildlife Trust with Team Wilder and all their resources. They've got resources on how to make a meadow, how to make ponds, how to community organise. So if you've sort of still got more questions, definitely head over there. There's loads of resources there. Really Wild Lockleaze, we've done our own series of how-to videos, so that's that link there, and there's lots of more upcoming events. If you live near Lockleaze or you just want to come get involved, we've got lots of events coming up on the Really Wild Lockleaze website as well. And then you got the West of England Nature Recovery Toolkit, which has a lot of opportunities for funding. And then that survey calendar that I've referred to a few times. So definitely check those links out if you have any other questions.
Brilliant. I'm just sharing another link in the chat. This is a link to a feedback survey, which we would really appreciate it if you took the time to give us some feedback on this event. To help tempt you, there is a £50 prize draw, so you can win £50 to spend on wildlife equipment. It just takes a few minutes. So please do click on the survey link and fill it out if you've got the time. So I'd just like to finish off by saying a huge thank you to Eric. It's been really great to learn about all these kind of different opportunities for urban nature and what people can do, and the great work that you've been doing in Lockleaze. And big thank you to our audience for being here and for your questions. And with that, I will end the show and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.
Made it in.